My talk used to be pretty straightforward because it used to be about a couple of experiments and what they were suggesting. Unfortunately, it didn't remain that way. And it got more and more complicated, okay, and more confusing. So I wish it would have been a little more clear, but all I am going to try to do is to take you to the arena where education seems to be landing itself. What is the future? I don't know. But I know what's wrong with the present. So let's first agree on that. Well, firstly, we know that we've got an antiquated system. I think I don't need to spend too much time on it. If you are interested in producing the kind of people that are shown in the bottom of that slide, a room full of clerks doing the same things over and over again, room full of factory workers doing the same things over and over again, then the old system is perfect. Just keep it as it is. It's meant to do that. It was designed to produce people in a world where people did the work of machines. If you don't want to produce people like that anymore, then you have to change the system. It's not a question of doing more of the same. It's a question of producing and designing something that is new. I go from country to country, and it does disappoint me to see countries spending billions on improving the quality of teachers so that they can produce even better clerks than the ones you see in that picture. What's the point? I bumped into all this accidentally almost 17 years ago through a rather lucky accident, often referred to as the hole-in-the-wall experiment. It's hardly an experiment. It basically was my attempt to see what would happen if children were given access to the internet. Poor children, and remember this is 17 years ago, so children who did not know what the internet was, what would they do with it? The results were not quite expected. We found that children who had not heard of the internet, who didn't know any English, were browsing and surfing within a matter of hours. In a month's time, they were downloading and installing games in English. In 4 months' time, they were typing their homework into search engines. So what does that mean? And I thought, in those days, my God, what have I done? This is not education. But I was completely wrong. I'd missed on a very, very important point. Yes, they were Googling stuff that they were doing in school. But how did they know how to copy down the right things? They weren't copying down the first hit. They were copying down the right things. Then I did a whole set of experiments to show that indeed they were learning, and they were retaining what they had learned through a mechanism that is unknown. I still don't understand how exactly it works, but I have some idea. Here's a glimpse of one of those years, I think 2002 or so, in Western India. So you'll notice that it's a completely unsupervised environment. There's no segregation by age, boys, girls. The little boy is telling his elder sister what to do. I don't know what was going on. And
somehow I have the feeling that the reason it shows this location I don't.
So the thing is, you can't step up close. Because if I step up close, they all stop. And then you say, what were you doing? And they'll all turn around and say, nothing. So I couldn't find out what was happening. Did you see them opening the menus? And that was a few minutes after I put the computer there. Who told them? I'm beginning to figure out. It's not who told them, it's what told them. It's the strangest story. Anyway, 2006, I moved to England on a big project. The project was to improve the quality of schooling in disadvantaged areas of India. And the, Newcastle University had got some funding for it. They called me, and I went to Newcastle. So there I was sitting in Newcastle, doing this work in India, when an English school teacher walked in one day and said, "What about us?" So I said, "What do you mean, what about you? I mean, you've got lots of money, you've got good schools, you've got lots of computers. My work has nothing to do with you." And she said, "But I have a problem. Why are the children not engaged? Why do they look so bored all the time? Why don't they pay any attention to me?" And I went to her school, and she said, and her colleagues said, "Let's do the hole-in-the-wall experiment in England." And I said, "No, I won't do it. It's impossible." So they said, "Why?" I said, "In England, if I do the hole-in-the-wall experiment, all you will get are frozen children. You can't do anything outdoors in England. So anyway, they laughed and they said, "Well, what do we do?" So I turned the hole in the wall inside out. It's very easy to do. Anybody can do it. Take a classroom, empty all the furniture out, put in 5 computers with big screens. Big screens are important. Take 25 children, and those computers are connected to the internet. Take 25 children, get them inside, and ask them a question. I call them big questions. They should be simple to understand, but deep to answer. To give you an example, with 9-year-olds with whom I work a lot, you bring them into the room, which is called a self-organized learning environment, and you say, "Well, guess what? I have a question. Why are eggs egg-shaped?" Now, 9-year-olds, I love that kind of, so do you know? They'll say. And I said, "No, honestly, I don't know. I'm sure that in this room there'll be very few people who know why eggs are egg-shaped." And then they go for it, okay? As soon as they hear that the teacher doesn't know the answer. So they go for it, and they're milling around and so on and so forth. There's chaos. And I pull the teachers back, and I say, "Stand back, don't do anything. Just stay back." The chaos begins to subside. And then, out of the 9-year-old voice, comes statements such as, "Believe it or not, the solid of revolution formed by a hyperbolic paraboloid has stress points which hold it together," or something like that. So where did you get that from? "Oh, just like that," they say. So I don't know what's going on. Well, take a look. So it quietens. And then here's one of the schools I'd given this question. What's the relationship between the brain and the body? So after the initial chaos is over, typically, this is what happens.
From various senses. It handles physical motion when walking, talking, standing, and sitting. It lets you think, dream, reason, and experience motions.
So basically, what they're talking is, I would guess is first year undergraduate physiology in 20 minutes. So they're not just taking the first Google hit and spouting it out. They're reading in some strange way. The internet doesn't know that they are children, so the internet is throwing everything it has at them. The children don't know what they are supposed to and what they're not supposed to read. They read everything. And they start quoting from the Lancet or from the Harvard Business Review or whatever it is. But they quote the right things. How? The group seems to know more than the individuals. And secondly, and I think this is most important, there is no competition. I'm only looking for one answer from the whole room. I'm not saying, "Are you better than her?" That seems to change everything. There's a big clue in it for us educational administrators. Then I found one more thing, that this whole process is helped if you do have an adult, but who is not a teacher, not necessarily a teacher, and perhaps not even knowledgeable. I called it the grandmother's method. We've all had grandparents, and you'll, I think, agree that grandparents have a different approach than parents or teachers. Parents and teachers use discipline. Sit down, do your homework, that sort of thing. Grandparents use admiration. How did you do that? My God, when I was your age, I could have never done anything like that. And the child says, don't you even know this? Let me show you something more. And so she's actually driving a learning spiral using admiration as the main technique. I wrote an article in The Guardian saying, if you are a British grandmother, if you have broadband and a web camera, then can you give me 1 hour of your time every week for free? And I got hundreds. They are called the Granny Cloud. The Granny Cloud is a loose group of, well, retired teachers, working teachers. There are a couple from Dubai, actually. And I can Skype them into faraway places where all they do is they don't teach, they just talk. And the children talk to them. And the children begin to change. It's very simple, it's free. So, in 2013, I got a prize called the TED Prize, and I decided to do an experimental project of bringing the self-organized learning environment and the Granny Cloud together. We called it the School in the Cloud. I built 7 of them. 5 are in India, ranging from the extremely remote locations where there's nothing, no electricity, no healthcare, no schooling, nothing at all, to urban middle-class India, and then urban middle-class Britain, 2 schools in the northeast of England. And over a 3-year period, I'm trying to see what happens to the children in that environment. So here's one of those in rural Bengal. So I'm sorry there are too many words on this, but just to revise, the hole in the wall showed us that children can teach themselves to use the internet. The souls showed us that children can learn almost anything off the internet if they work in groups and, I'm sorry to say this, if the teacher is absent. The absence of the teacher is a pedagogical tool. Okay, if you want to put it in big words. So, reading comprehension becomes the predominant skill that is required, but they seem to be able to do that on their own. But we have a problem. Something that holds the whole system back is the problem of assessment, the examination system. How can teachers use a method like that, given the fact that the children have to perform in an examination where there is no internet, there is paper and pencil? So I tried looking at the origins of this system. Where did these kind of examinations come from? And they're hundreds of years old. I'll show you a picture of an office from 1910. Okay, room full of clerks, a floor supervisor. It's a human computer. People copying down things from one ledger to another, adding, subtracting, not asking questions, sitting quietly. Okay? So look at that again. You can tell what the examination system is trying to produce. We don't need them because those jobs don't exist and those offices don't exist anymore. So it is an outdated system. You don't have to do examination reform. You have to change examinations to something else. Offices today look like this. So this is the world that we are going to prepare our children for. It kind of reminds you of the hole in the wall, isn't it? So to prepare them for a world that looks like this, shouldn't the examination system look like this? You see them everywhere in the shopping malls, but it's not allowed inside school. We are in denial. The education system wants to pretend that the internet does not exist. So put away all your devices, put away everything. Now come in here. Now take your paper and pencil and calculate the square root of a number. Okay? I mean, it's sheer torture. So, what's the future of assessments? Well, we need to, first of all, have open-ended questions. You can't ask them in the present system. Present system, because thousands of examiners have to correct papers the same way, you cannot ask an open-ended question. We have to change that. If we have to change that, we need automated methods that can evaluate the answers to open-ended questions. We need more research in that area. It's a priority area right now, the change in the assessment system. So, what is going on in those self-organized learning environments? I turned to my old subject. My training originally is in theoretical physics. I looked to physics for an answer, and I think I know what is happening there. We've had it's a new subject, but for the last 50 or 60 years, we know that under certain circumstances, chaotic systems show spontaneous order. You see that everywhere. In the desert, you have the sand, you have wind flowing around, and suddenly you see a dust devil rise like this, move around, and then die out. If somebody said, "Who made that?" you say, "Nobody made it, it just happened." Spontaneous order. I think what we are seeing when children cluster around the internet is that given the right input question, they spontaneously order. It's a new form, and it happens only in the presence of the internet. And we tend to underestimate the size and nature of the internet. We just look at it as interconnected computers. Well, that's like saying a brain is interconnected neurons. It's not. What we're looking at over there are billions and billions of interconnected switches. We know what happens when you connect switches in billions together. We know what it does. It thinks. We don't know much about the internet from that point of view. We should examine that. So what's the future of pedagogy? We've got to allow spontaneous order as an official method inside schools. And I want to say something which will perhaps annoy some of you, which is I want to re-examine the emphasis on reading, writing, and arithmetic. There are 3 clerical skills. They were very important earlier. They probably are very important today. But if a child can point his phone at a piece of Japanese text, and the phone reads it out to him back in Arabic, can that child read Japanese or not? You say, no, he can't read Japanese. Well, let me put it this way. Child plus phone, if you consider that as a composite creature, that composite creature can read Japanese. Spending 20 years teaching him how to read Japanese using only his head is a bit of a pointless exercise. Writing. How many children are going to write by hand? Nobody. Arithmetic. You all know how to do 14.5% of 69 dirhams using paper and pencil. But if I gave you to do that, would anybody in this room take out a piece of paper? They would all pull out their phones. Why spend all those years? People say, so are you saying they're going to be blank brains with a phone? That's not the case. When you look at your phone, you learn continuously. The brain retains what it wants to retain, what it likes to retain. You will not get a moron if you allow the internet. You'll get the opposite. This picture shows the present educational system. And look at it, everything in that picture, except for the sleeping child, is obsolete. If you surround children with obsolete things from the 19th century, they sleep. So what should we do with curriculum? Well, the curriculum is full of obsolete stuff. GCSE had a question, what is an oxbow lake? Now you tell me, if you go through life without knowing what an oxbow lake is, will it matter? I don't think so. I don't know why it's there in the first place. We've got to take out all that junk and put in new stuff. The internet has to be taught as a subject, like physics, chemistry, or biology. Networked systems have to be taught as a subject. Chaos and spontaneous order have to be taught as a subject. And we need to take out stuff to accommodate these. Lastly, just an example. The transportation industry. For 5,000 years, we went from place to place using the horse and cart. You got into back, you told the driver where to go, and he took you there. When the internal combustion engine was discovered, the horses went, but something else happened which was not expected. The passengers became the drivers, and the coachman went. And now, from next year, you can see one standing outside. The cars will drive themselves. One day, your grandchildren will ask you, what does driving mean? And you'll say, there used to be cars. We had a wheel, we had a stick, we had 3 pedals, and we had to press the pedals and move the thing and move the wheel, and the car would move. That's called driving. And your grandchild will say, don't be silly. So take it I'm out of time, take it to our own subject, which is education. Well, I think it says it all up there. The coachman at the top left-hand corner, the passengers with the wheel in their hands, which is what I'm trying to do, and the next step, just around the corner, where that same grandchild will ask you a much more difficult question. He might ask you, what does it mean to say, I know? Okay, just think about that. So how will we design a new school? I think I have a vaguish idea. Let the internet in. The internet must permeate the education system. What does that mean? It means that the student will deal not with answers, but with questions. And learn the ability to find the answer just in time. Our education system is just in case. You're taught for 12 years things that just in case if you need it one day. We have to change it to an ability where if you have faced with a problem, you can use the internet and find the answer instantly. You know how to do that. If we can do that, we've probably reached the future of learning. Thank you.